She faked 4 million students and sold her startup to America's biggest bank. This financial giant was supposed to secure the wealth of an entire generation. The bank's top executives wanted rapid growth and ignored every warning sign. They bought 4 million names without checking if a single email actually existed. JP Chase wired $175 million to buy her company. Her name was Charlie Javice, and she promised to solve the college debt crisis. She grew up in an affluent New York neighborhood and graduated from the Wharton School. She built a startup that she claimed would unlock billions in financial aid for students. Wall Street watched her rise, eager to capture the next generation of banking customers. She turned a simple idea into a $175 million acquisition. The path to fooling the world's most powerful bankers started years earlier. Years before the bank paid a single dollar, government regulators had already flagged her company. She pitched her startup as the ultimate TurboTax for student financial aid, raising millions from prominent venture funds. 2017, the Federal Trade Commission sent a formal warning to her company for misleading students. The company used a domain name that the government flagged as confusingly similar to the official federal student aid website. In 2018, she settled a lawsuit with the government, agreeing to clearly state she ran a private company. Despite these early legal battles, her public profile continued to grow rapidly, catching the attention of massive Wall Street institutions. The chief executive of JP Chase publicly urged his team to aggressively acquire technology startups to fight off competition. The bank allocated a massive $10 billion annual technology budget specifically to fund acquisitions and digital expansion. The bank's head of digital products identified her startup as the prime target to capture the coveted younger demographic. The bank feared losing the younger generation's deposits to new, digital-only mobile banking competitors. Internal documents labeled the acquisition as a high-priority strategic win long before any customer data was actually verified. The bank's acquisition team was heavily incentivized by massive performance bonuses tied to closing technology deals quickly. Due diligence teams began formal negotiations to acquire the student aid startup in the middle of 2021. The acquisition officially closed in September of that year for a final price of $175 million. She personally pocketed $21 million from the sale and moved into a luxury condominium in Miami. Regulators later alleged she lied about her startup's growth rate, claiming it was expanding by 100% every year. But the first major crack in the story was that the startup's actual revenue for the entire year was less than $100,000. Despite the massive valuation, the young founder was running her entire empire with only 15 full-time employees. The deal was finalized, but a single request for raw data would crack the entire illusion. In final negotiations, the bank's due diligence team demanded to see the raw database of over 4 million customers. She initially refused to hand over the list, claiming student privacy laws legally prevented her from sharing the data. Executives sat in high-backed leather chairs, nodding at her explanations, completely unaware that this legal shield was actually an empty vault. But the bank insisted on verification, making the entire acquisition contingent on a third-party audit of the customer list. In July of 2021, she asked her own director of engineering to create a synthetic list of fake users. The engineer stared at the request on his screen, realizing what his boss was asking him to do. The director of engineering flatly refused her request, stating clearly in an email that he did not want to do anything illegal. Undeterred, she bypassed her internal engineering team and contacted a data science professor at a New York area college. She searched for an outside contractor who would build the database without asking questions. She paid the university professor $18,000 to fabricate a database of over 4 million student profiles. The professor wrote a custom script to automatically generate fake names, physical addresses, dates of birth, and high schools. With a few lines of code, a professor in a quiet office created millions of fake identities out of thin air. The professor completed the entire generation process in less than a week, applying noise algorithms to make the data look organic. In one email, she explicitly asked the professor if the fake student names would look weird if the bank ran them through verification. She only cared if the illusion was polished enough to slip past the bank's automated security checks. The professor assured her that the synthetic data was statistically sound and would easily pass basic automated validation checks. She also paid a separate technology consultant over $10,000 to create an additional set of fake data to cover her tracks. She bought digital data from multiple sources to obscure the origin of the fake names. Further build the illusion, her chief growth officer spent over $100,000 to buy a real list of student names. Her chief growth officer received a massive massive $5 million payout from the bank acquisition for his role in the company. The $5 million payout on the line, the executive stayed silent and let the deal move forward. On August 5, 2021, the fabricated database containing over 4 million rows was uploaded to the bank. Bank's due diligence team spent less than 48 hours reviewing the massive raw database. Once it was uploaded, analysts at the world's largest bank glanced at the massive list of names, checked a few boxes, and assumed it was real. Bank's data scientists ran basic statistical checks, but completely failed to verify if any of the email addresses actually existed. In reality, the fake database contained thousands of obvious dummy email addresses ending in example.com and test.com. Glaring errors remained on the screen, but the bank rushed to close the deal anyway. Fabricated list had a male-to-female ratio of exactly 50-50 down to the decimal point, a statistical impossibility for real applicants. The dates of birth in the fake database were distributed in an impossibly uniform pattern across the entire 4 million list. Real human data is messy, but this database was too perfect to be real. The bank's third-party due diligence consultant only reviewed aggregate summaries and did not catch the fake raw data. Forensic investigators later recovered deleted emails between her and the data science professor on the bank's own servers. Long after the money was wired, those deleted emails remained frozen on the servers, waiting for investigators to piece together the paper trail. Investigators found that the database contained randomized zip codes that did not match the actual states listed in the same rows. With the fake database uploaded, the files were ready for the bank. Contract was signed, the wire transfers completed, and Charlie Javice became a managing director at JP Chase. January of 2022, the bank's marketing department decided to launch a test email campaign using the new database. They sent test marketing emails to a random sample of 400,000 users from the acquired database. Of the 400,000 emails sent, 72% bounced back as undeliverable. The open rate for the delivered emails was just 1.1% compared to the bank's typical 30%. Marketing team immediately flagged the campaign due to the high bounce rate. Bank's internal audit and cybersecurity teams quickly launched a forensic investigation into the entire database. The investigators started digging into the files, tracing the origins of the 4 million student names. In November of 2022, the bank officially fired both Charlie Javice and her chief growth officer. On December 22, 2022, the bank filed a civil fraud lawsuit against her in federal court. She immediately countersued the bank, claiming they fabricated the fraud charges specifically to deny her a $20 million retention bonus. In January of 2023, the bank officially shut down the startup's website and discontinued all of its services. During an earnings call that same month, the bank's chief executive admitted to investors that the acquisition was a mistake. Her bail was set at $2 million, which she secured using her property in Miami. In May of 2023, she officially pleaded not guilty to all of the criminal charges brought against her. The data science professor entered into a formal non-prosecution agreement, choosing to cooperate fully with federal prosecutors. A separate technology consultant who received over $10,000 also agreed to cooperate with the government's ongoing investigation. The federal government seized several of her bank accounts, freezing over $10 million in remaining acquisition funds. Despite the relatively small financial impact on the bank, the scandal severely damaged their reputation for rigorous risk management. The failed acquisition is now taught in business schools as a warning of what happens when fear of missing out overrides due diligence. Criminal trial has been delayed multiple times due to the massive volume of electronic discovery, which exceeds 4 million documents. The young woman who once graced the covers of business magazines now spends her days preparing for a federal trial. While Charlie Javice celebrated her new wealth, JP Morgan's marketing team pressed send on a test campaign that exposed the fraud. To the public, this looked like a brilliant young founder outsmarting a financial giant. Defense attorneys argue that the bank possessed vast resources and simply failed to perform basic, elementary due diligence. They argue that a bank with thousands of analysts should have easily spotted the fake names if they had bothered to look. Internal emails revealed that the bank rushed the acquisition out of fear that rivals like Goldman Sachs would buy the startup first. It wasn't a failure of technology, it was a failure of ego. The bank's leadership was so terrified of looking outdated that they threw $175 million at a startup they barely understood. They were more afraid of Goldman Sachs winning the deal than they were of losing $175 million of shareholder money. $175 million write-down represented less than 0.5% of the bank's annual net income. To a bank generating over $37 billion a year, this loss was just a rounding error. The bank's lawsuit officially seeks the full return of the purchase price plus substantial damages. But the money had already been distributed, spent on luxury condos and legal defense. defense funds. Bank has since overhauled its acquisition process, requiring independent verification of all databases. Only after the damage was done did the world's largest bank decide to start checking the lists they buy. This is the dark side of the startup world, where founders are told to fake it until they make it. Charlie Javice didn't just cross that line. She erased it. Wanted the headline, the press release, and the praise from technology analysts. They wanted to prove they could compete with the new digital banks. They bypassed the very safeguards designed to protect their depositors' money. Every compliance officer, every auditor, and every risk manager was sidelined by the rush to sign. The system didn't fail, it was deliberately turned off. The test email campaign failed, but the real scandal was how JP Morgan Chase's own greed blinded them. Charlie Javice's startup collapsed because synthetic data cannot survive a real-world test. On April 3, 2023, the Department of Justice charged Charlie Javice with wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy. Securities and Exchange Commission filed parallel civil fraud charges against her the following day. The criminal case, United States versus Javice, was filed in the Southern District of New York. Convicted on all counts, she faces a maximum penalty of 30 years in federal prison. The startup called Frank is gone, its website shut down, and the 72% bounce rate remains on the record. $175 million acquisition remains one of the largest due diligence failures in banking history.